I, 41F, need help figuring out if I'm being unreasonable here. My husband Tom, 41M, and I have been married for 13 years, and I've been a stay-at-home mom since our first child was born. We have 3 kids, Jack, 9M, Emma, 5F, and Lucy, 2F. Tom runs his own construction company that he started right before we got married, and over the years it's become quite successful. Tom and I met through mutual friends at a college reunion. He was charming and ambitious, already planning to start his own business. I was working as a marketing executive at the time, and we clicked instantly. After we got married, we agreed that I would continue working until we had kids. When Jack was born, Tom's business was doing well enough that I could stay home, which was always our plan. The first few years were great. Tom was a devoted father and husband, always made time for family dinners, and we'd have date nights twice a month while his parents watched Jack. Things started changing when Emma was born. His business was growing rapidly, and he began working longer hours and most Saturdays. I understood because he was building something for our family's future, so I took on more responsibilities at home. By the time Lucy came along 2 years ago, Tom was barely involved in any household matters. His only contributions are taking out the trash and putting the older kids on the bus in the morning. He complains if I ask him to watch the kids for even an hour while I go to the grocery store, saying he needs to focus on work. Meanwhile, I handle everything else: cooking, cleaning, laundry, school runs, doctor appointments, birthday parties, playdates, and managing the kids' activities. Last week, I brought up something that I'd been thinking about for a while. My 2 closest friends from college, Beth and Maria, suggested we take a weekend trip together next year. Just a simple weekend at a beach resort about 3 hours away, nothing wild or crazy. They're both moms too, and we thought it would be nice to have some adult time. I haven't had a single day to myself since Lucy was born, and I thought it was a reasonable request. When I mentioned this to Tom, he completely lost it. He started yelling about how I was trying to abandon my responsibilities as a mother. He kept saying things like, "How can you even think about leaving the kids? What kind of mother wants to go away without her children?" He brought up that he works 6 days a week and can't handle watching them alone on weekends because he needs to rest. The irony is that whenever we go on family vacations, Tom spends most of his time on the phone with clients or checking emails. Last summer, we went to Disney World, and he barely participated in anything. He got irritated when the kids wanted to wait in line for rides, complained about the heat, and spent most evenings working in the hotel room while I took the kids to watch fireworks alone. I tried explaining that it was just 2 nights and suggested that my mom could help him with the kids. She lives 20 minutes away and always offers to help. But Tom wouldn't listen. Instead, he went on this long rant about how I was trying to use his money for my enjoyment and that I never helped with his business. This really hurt because whenever I offered to help in the past, like when his secretary quit last year and they were short-staffed, he said I wouldn't understand how things worked there and would just mess up his systems. The argument got even worse when he brought up his friend Mike's divorce. Mike's wife had started taking girls' trips a few years ago and eventually left him for someone she met during one of those trips. Tom said he wasn't going to let that happen to our marriage. I told him he was being ridiculous. I just wanted a break with my friends, not to start an affair. Besides, Beth and Maria are both happily married with kids of their own. Things escalated further when he called his parents that same evening. They've always been overprotective of Tom since he's their only son. His mother immediately called me to lecture me about my duties as a wife and mother. She brought up how she never took trips without Tom's father in their 45 years of marriage, and that's how marriages stayed strong back then. She even suggested that maybe I needed to see a therapist if I was feeling overwhelmed with my responsibilities. Yesterday, I tried to reason with Tom again. I suggested we could plan both a couple's weekend and my friend's trip at different times, but he shut me down completely. He said he needed to have a serious conversation about our marriage and expectations, and if things didn't align with what he wanted, he would move out. He actually started looking up apartments online while saying this. What really gets me is that Tom takes business trips every few months. Last year, he spent 5 days in Las Vegas for a construction convention. He posted pictures of himself at shows and restaurants with colleagues, clearly enjoying himself after the convention hours. When I pointed this out, he said it was completely different because it was for work and not pleasure. He seems to think that because he earns the money, he gets to make all the decisions about how we spend our time. I've been nothing but supportive of his career for 13 years. I gave up my own career to raise our children and take care of everything at home so he could focus on growing his business. Now when I ask for one weekend to myself, he's threatening to end our marriage. His behavior seems controlling, and I'm starting to wonder if there's more to his reaction than just concern about the kids. I talked to Beth about this, and she thinks Tom might be dealing with some insecurity issues. Her husband was actually supportive when she brought up our trip idea, even offering to take their kids to visit his parents that weekend. I can't help but compare our situations and feel resentful about Tom's reaction. Am I really being unreasonable for wanting 2 days to myself after 9 years of constant childcare? I love my kids more than anything, but I feel like I'm losing my identity as an individual. I don't want to damage my marriage, but I also don't want to spend the rest of my life never doing anything without my husband's approval. Update 1 First, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Your insights helped me see that Tom's reaction wasn't normal or healthy. Unfortunately, things have gotten much worse since I last posted. Tom moved out last week and is staying at his parents' house. The day before he left, he dropped the bomb on me. He had hired a nanny without any discussion or input from me. He said since I was so desperate for a break from my responsibilities, he found someone to help with the kids. The nanny, Sarah, 25F, showed up at our door the very next morning at 7 a.m., saying Tom had hired her to help full-time. I was completely blindsided. Not only did I not need or want a nanny, but Tom had gone behind my back to hire one. When I tried to tell Sarah that there must be some mistake, she showed me her contract, signed by Tom with a surprisingly high salary, well above what most nannies in our area make. She seemed sweet and professional, but something felt off about the whole situation. A few days after Sarah started, I ran into Lisa, one of Tom's employees, at the grocery store. Lisa has worked for Tom's company for 5 years and we've always been friendly. She seemed uncomfortable when she saw me, and after some hesitation, she revealed something that made my stomach turn. Sarah wasn't just some random nanny Tom had found through an agency. He had actually met her 3 months ago at a business conference in Phoenix where she was working as an event coordinator. According to Lisa, Tom had spent a lot of time talking with Sarah during the conference. Lisa thought it was odd because Tom usually doesn't socialize much at these events, preferring to network with potential clients instead. She remembered Sarah because Tom had mentioned several times how impressed he was with her organizational skills. When I confronted Tom about this, he became defensive and accused me of being paranoid. He said he was just trying to help me since I was clearly so overwhelmed with my duties that I needed a vacation. He turned it around on me, saying this proved his point about me not being committed to our family if I was suspicious of him trying to help. The whole situation became even more suspicious as days went by. Sarah started staying late, well past the hours Tom had supposedly set for her. She's always finding reasons to be around when Tom comes to visit the kids, which has suddenly become a daily occurrence. Yesterday, I overheard her on the phone in our backyard, telling someone how her boss was misunderstood by his wife and needed support during this difficult time. Tom's behavior has changed dramatically too. Before moving out, he barely spent time with the kids, always too busy with work. Now he shows up every evening right around the time Sarah is supposed to leave, saying he wants to have dinner with the kids. These dinners usually stretch on, with him and Sarah having lengthy conversations in the driveway afterward. When I try to join these conversations, they quickly wrap up or change the subject. I mentioned my concerns to Tom's sister Amy, hoping she might see how strange this all was. Instead, she accused me of creating problems because I felt guilty about wanting to abandon my family. She said I should be grateful that Tom cared enough to hire help, and that many husbands would have just filed for divorce. She even suggested that maybe if I hadn't asked for that weekend trip, none of this would have happened. The kids are confused by all the changes. Jack asked me why Daddy moved out but comes over every day with Miss Sarah. Emma keeps asking if Miss Sarah is going to be her new mommy because that's what her friend at school said happens when parents fight. Lucy just cries more than usual, picking up on all the tension in the house. I tried to talk to Tom about how inappropriate it was to bring a stranger into our home without consulting me, especially someone he already knew from a conference. He dismissed my concerns and said I was being difficult. He suggested that if I really cared about our marriage, I would be more appreciative of his efforts to help me. The most frustrating part is how everyone seems to have forgotten that this all started because I asked for one weekend away with my friends. Now I have a stranger in my house every day, my husband living with his parents, and my children confused and upset. Tom has somehow managed to make me look like the bad guy to everyone while completely changing our family dynamic. My friend Beth thinks I should start documenting everything: Sarah's unusual hours, Tom's sudden interest in family dinners, the conversations in the driveway. She says something doesn't add up, and I'm starting to agree with her. I've noticed Sarah dressing more nicely on the days Tom is scheduled to visit, and she always seems to know his schedule better than I do. I feel like I'm going crazy. Am I reading too much into this situation, or is there something more going on here? How did asking for one weekend away turn into this complete upheaval of my family life? Update 2: I finally discovered what was really going on, and it's worse than I imagined. Sarah isn't just a nanny, she and Tom have been seeing each other since that conference in Phoenix. The truth came out in the most cliché way possible, but I'm actually grateful for Tom's carelessness. Last weekend, Tom had come over to spend time with the kids but left in a hurry when he got a business call. In his rush, he forgot his iPad on the kitchen counter. He'd always been protective of his devices, but this time he'd left it unlocked and his messages were still open. I know I shouldn't have looked, but something in my gut told me to check. The messages between him and Sarah went back to the conference 3 months ago. They had been planning this whole thing meticulously. Tom had been unhappy in our marriage for a while but didn't want to be the bad guy by asking for a divorce. When I brought up wanting a weekend away with my friends, Sarah suggested it was the perfect opportunity. They could use my request as proof that I was checking out of the marriage and family responsibilities. The nanny position was Sarah's idea. She told Tom it would be the perfect cover, she could be around the house regularly without raising suspicion, and they could see each other every day. Tom agreed, even joking about how his concerned dad act would make him look like the better parent if we ended up in a custody battle. What made me sick was reading how they laughed about everyone taking Tom's side. Sarah had written about how Tom's mom treated her like a savior, praising her for helping her poor son with his neglectful wife. They had been meeting up at hotels during her supposed lunch breaks, and all those driveway conversations were just for show. When I confronted Tom with the evidence, he didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. Instead, he tried to turn it around on me, saying I drove him to this by wanting to go on trips without him. He claimed that Sarah understood the importance of family and would never ask for time away from her responsibilities like I did. The fact that she was literally having an affair with a married man while working as his children's nanny apparently didn't strike him as irresponsible. Tom actually had the audacity to suggest we could work things out if I agreed to fire Sarah and focus on being a better wife and mother. He said he would move back home and we could go to marriage counseling, but I needed to understand that my request for a weekend away had shown him how different our values were. I forwarded all the messages to my email and took screenshots before Tom realized he'd left his iPad. Within an hour of him retrieving it, all the messages were deleted. He tried to convince me I was imagining things, but stopped when I mentioned the screenshots. The worst part was telling the kids that Miss Sarah wouldn't be coming anymore. Emma cried because she'd grown attached, which made me feel even more betrayed. This woman had wormed her way into my children's lives while sleeping with their father. I called Tom's business partner, Mike, who'd always been fair and honest. He confirmed that several employees had felt uncomfortable about Tom and Sarah's behavior at the conference but didn't feel they could say anything. Mike was furious because Tom had paid Sarah's inflated nanny salary through the company accounts, listing her as a personal assistant. I haven't told Tom's family yet. Part of me wants to send them all the screenshots, especially his mother who's been telling everyone what a terrible wife I am. But I'm trying to handle this carefully for the kids' sake. They've been through enough confusion already. I've contacted a divorce lawyer and moved all my personal documents to a safe location. The lawyer says the messages and Mike's statement about the company funds will be very helpful in the divorce proceedings. She also mentioned that trying to alienate me from the kids by bringing in his affair partner as a nanny could work in my favor regarding custody. Update 3: the divorce is progressing, and everything has finally come out in the open. I wasn't planning to expose Tom and Sarah's affair to his family, but they forced my hand when they started pressuring me to reconcile with him. About a month ago, Tom's business partner Mike caught them together at a hotel during what was supposed to be an important client meeting. Mike had shown up to help with the presentation, only to find that there was no client. He was furious because Tom had been neglecting the business for months, and they'd lost several major contracts. Mike confronted him right there and threatened to dissolve their partnership. The news spread quickly through their company and eventually reached Tom's family. His mother called me crying, asking if I'd known about the affair. When I told her about Sarah being hired as a nanny to cover up their relationship, she finally realized how badly she'd treated me. But some of his family, including his sister Amy, still think I share some blame. According to them, if I had been more attentive and hadn't asked for that weekend away, Tom wouldn't have been vulnerable to Sarah's advances. The custody arrangement was finalized last week. I got primary custody, with Tom getting weekend visits. But he's only shown up twice in the past month. Sarah apparently doesn't like having the kids around because they remind her of being a nanny. She actually complained to Tom that she didn't sign up to be a stepmother to 3 kids. The irony would be funny if it wasn't so sad for my children. Tom's business has taken a serious hit. Mike pulled out of the partnership and took half their clients with him. Several employees quit after the scandal broke, and Tom's reputation in the local construction industry is ruined. He's now trying to convince me to reconcile, saying he made a huge mistake and that Sarah was just a distraction. He sent me a long email about how he realizes now that I was a great wife and mother, and his controlling behavior drove me to want time away from the family. I moved in with my sister temporarily while looking for a house to buy with my divorce settlement. The kids are adjusting surprisingly well. Jack understands more than I wish he did and has been incredibly supportive. Emma stopped asking about Sarah after I explained that sometimes grown-ups make bad choices that hurt people. Lucy is just happy to have a cousin her age to play with at my sister's house. The best part? I'm finally taking that weekend trip with Beth and Maria next month. After everything that happened, it feels almost surreal that something as simple as wanting 2 days away led to exposing Tom's true character. Beth joked that I should thank Tom and Sarah. Instead of a weekend away, I got a whole new life away from a controlling husband. Tom still tries to contact me about reconciliation, especially since Sarah left him for a wealthy client she met through his company. His mother keeps telling me that he's miserable and has learned his lesson. But I've learned my lesson too. I deserve better than someone who would punish me for wanting a single weekend to myself after 9 years of constant caregiving. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I just kept quiet and never asked for that weekend away. But then I remember that anyone who would go to such lengths to punish their spouse for a simple request would have shown their true colors eventually.